Hello, and welcome to the Olive Press. My name is Emily Bacon, and I'm here with Miss Elena Bresee. Mrs. Elena Bresee.
That's
I
right.
should say. Yeah, well, welcome over here.
Thank you for having me.
So, you're my mom's friend mostly. You're friends with me too, but
Mm-hmm.
we've known you guys for what, about 12 years now?
12 years.
It's a long time.
Yeah,
That's like over half of my life.
I know.
Yeah.
You were just a little thing.
Little still,
You're still
but
little.
definitely, yeah, right.
Petite, we say.
Not grown, yeah. So, well, thanks for coming on. So, just for everybody on here listening, you will hear a knock on the door. That is my Taco Bell. It's good.
Yummy.
Love Taco Bell.
Love tacos.
So why don't we start at the beginning? How did you meet Mr. Bresee?
Okay, so I met Mr. Bresee after 4 years of college, going to Steubenville,
Okay.
and came home and met him 2 weeks after I graduated.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So what did you major in at Steubenville?
I had a double major,
Okay.
humanities and Catholic culture, which is
Oh.
like history and liberal arts, and then theology.
Oh, okay. So how has that applied to your life as a mom?
So, humanities and Catholic culture is a study of how the faith permeates the culture
Okay.
and shapes all of the institutions and the land and the folkways. And so, it's really important because it teaches you about how the faith influenced literature, economics,
Yeah.
philosophy, and everything. So it's a perfect degree for someone ready to raise a family.
Wow. So having that background, and I guess we'll get more into your past as well, but having that background, how has that affected how you see the things that are happening in the world today, and also just how you would, I guess, explain those things to your kids too?
Yeah, it's everything. I spent 4 years of my life in Protestant high school.
Okay.
So I went to a great Protestant high school, Bellevue Christian School. And then finally in my senior year, I was like, I'm ready to be around my own people. Mm-hmm. So I went to Steubenville. And that was the first time that I started to get a Catholic view of everything. I mean, I always had it from my family, but as far as how it really permeates the entire culture, everything.
Right.
So we learned and we studied everything. The Humanities and Catholic Culture program at Steubenville was one of the first of its kind throughout the whole country.
Wow.
Professor James Gaston came and started the program. And actually, my class, we had 5 in my graduating class, and we were the first graduating Humanities and Catholic Culture
Wow.
graduates. So it was a great time, and they have since replicated the program in various places. Carroll College has something like it. U of Mary has something like it. So many universities have something like it. So it really teaches you to treasure the influence of the church throughout in your world. So and then also to discern what is not of the church. And we studied the social teachings of the church, communism,
Okay.
socialism, all of the great encyclicals, starting with Leo XIII, Rerum Novarum, and that is just a whole view of life that is really important because the church has amazing things to say about the social life and the economic life.
Yeah.
We may see that now. When our current pontiff speaks about poverty or the immigrants or things, we may look at that and be not as excited, maybe because he's not speaking on something like a pro-life issue or something that's more, quote, conservative. But the church has taught on these social issues since really with Leo XIII. And so it's very important that the church permeate the whole secular world and all of our viewpoints. So it's really important. So actually, it's been huge. I mean, being able to understand the different forms of government and being able to talk about it with my children because they all go to charter school, which is essentially a public school. Being able to articulate how our faith penetrates science, evolution, all of that. Being able to articulate what we're allowed to read in literature, what we're not allowed to read, to understand the index of where we're not really allowed to read those things. So it's big. I mean, you have to be able, if you're going to raise a family, you don't have the luxury of just not knowing.
Right. And that's interesting that you say literature, especially, because I'm thinking, I've had people tell me like, oh, you shouldn't read the Communist Manifesto, or you shouldn't read certain works by Lenin or something, because they're counterintuitive to what Catholicism teaches. But I mean, I would think, and obviously I don't have the education that I do, but wouldn't it be important to read those things so you understand your enemy, so you can, learn how to kind of combat what they're teaching with solid catechism and solid
The
works?
church has never said that we're never allowed to read them. We have to
okay.
read them when there is a reason, a justifiable reason, and then we have to read them in the right way.
Okay.
And actually, it was Pope Benedict XVI that said that the index of forbidden books, which is that list of books that we're not allowed to read, which they stopped adding to, I don't exactly know the year, but he actually said that list retains its moral force. So we're not really encouraged to pick up Machiavelli's The Prince and just read it blindly.
Right.
You really have to have, first of all, a reason to do it, because it's it can be very damaging. And number two, you have to have the right guide for it. You have to know what you're doing. So just to pick it up one day and say, I'm going to read this. The church does not recommend that lay people do that. And it's in her wisdom for that reason. Like when we were at charter, if a book came up that was on the list, I would go to the English teacher and say, oh yeah, we don't read that book.
I didn't know that there were specific books, like there was like a blacklist of books. Like I didn't even know that. I'd have to, I want to look that up now. Excuse me. I know when I was at charter, there were some that were just horrible in general, like Brave New World.
Right.
And I don't know how the literature has changed.
Well, some of the more modern books haven't even been put on the list because they're
really?
too modern.
Yeah.
But then some books like Les Miserables,
That's on the book?
Victor Hugo is on the list.
Really?
And they even say why it's on the list. It's it's very challenging to authority. It puts authority in a very negative light. I mean, certainly there was difficulties during the French Revolution, but it's not a great idea to get your ideas of what the French Revolution was through Victor Hugo. Not a great idea. He was definitely slanted against authority. So that would be one example. Machiavelli would be another. It's not, there's another one, Gulliver's Travels.
Really? What?
The full edition. Now, I believe
okay.
there are amended editions of Gulliver's Travels, but I think the full editions, and again, I haven't read it, but I do believe that's on there.
I wonder why that would be, because that's
I think
a children's book, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's it might be immorality. Or glorification of immorality. So that's, the church used to do that. It's interesting. My mother says this. We always talk about this. Is it Oklahoma? We never have it. One of your listeners will be able to tell us. It was either the show Oklahoma or it was the other one, Carousel, that the bishops came out and said they didn't want Catholics.
Really?
I've
seen Oklahoma.
You probably have seen it.
Yeah, and
or
I
it's
like
either
it.
that or Carousel. I can't remember.
I've never
it's
seen
one or the
Carousel,
other.
but I liked Oklahoma.
So there were definitely reasons, and I can't remember which it was, but it was glorification of sin, and that and the bishop said, no, we don't want you watching that.
Yeah, and Oklahoma came out in the 50s. I'm trying to think of.
I think it was early 60s actually.
Was it? Okay. I'm trying to think of what could be in that. Well, I don't know.
I don't know.
Oh, you know what? I think, I do understand that. Because there was a part in it that had like there was something that you can look into and it had like,
indecent pictures or something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I can kind of understand
I don't know if
guess.
it was that, my point is, and there was a list also, there was also the League of Decency with movies,
okay.
And they, the bishops were very involved in discerning what movies they did not want their faithful to watch.
Wow.
So we kind of we have a little bit of that left over, but there was definitely some guidance
Yeah.
given in the earlier
Well,
times.
and I wonder if it would even be possible nowadays to have a list like that, or to even have the bishops be like in consensus about those, you know,
Right.
because I mean, in every facet, there's always, well, not always, but there's going to be generally like disagreement
Yeah.
about certain
Yeah.
things. Like
Yeah.
even in regards to homosexuality,
know.
things of that nature,
Yeah.
there's still disagreements about, which, I mean, you would think that's a pretty cut and dry type thing. You
Well,
know?
those are the days we live in. Our Lady of Akita said it will be bishop against bishop. So
Right.
it's really not, that's not the norm. It's just kind of the crazy days we live
Right.
in right now
Unfortunately, it's not even surprising nowadays.
to
Like,
have a,
well, to have that dissent, I think.
I know, we're so used to it.
Yeah.
Poor thing. Emily, you don't even remember when it wasn't like that. Neither
I
do
wasn't born into it. Yeah, well, and I wonder how it's going to be when Gianna and Finnegan are older
Right.
too, you know? And so that's so cool that you have that knowledge to be able to pass on to your kids. And actually, I want to kind of look into seeing. Maybe
Well, you
if I
don't
can
have
do
to
that
go.
type of-
When I met Mr. Bresee, I came back from Steubenville. I had all of these books. I walked into his home, and his father had all the first editions of the same books I had been reading in college.
Wow.
It took me a student loan, a student loan, and going all the way to Ohio to get the same thing that Paul got just from his father, just from reading books. And certainly Mr. Bresee was much more educated, and he just picked up a book and started reading it. And he was a convert.
Wow.
And he just started reading.
He was a convert? I didn't know
He
that.
was a convert, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, he read his way into the church. So it doesn't require a $40,000 debt and a trip to Ohio for 4 years. You can pick up a book and start reading it. It's one of the things that I really love to have the young people, young families do, to just start reading. And there's
Right.
some really brilliant people in the parish that they read, and they
Yeah, I know. I wish that I loved to read. You know, I'm actually working my way slowly through Saint Therese's Story of a Soul.
oh,
It's on my
nice.
counter actually, but
Yeah.
it's slow going, not because of how she writes, but because I loathe reading.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's good.
yeah.
Well, that's good that you recognize it.
Trying to practice, you know. I used to
Now,
like it, but not
You
anymore.
used to, yeah. I find that technology, it's just a muscle that if you use technology, it directly weakens your reading.
Interesting. Okay.
That's what I find in my own life. I mean,
Yeah,
I used to
I
be
bet
able
that's
to.
true.
Yeah. Now, if I'm on the blue screen too much, my appetite for reading falls.
Decreases.
So, turning it off helps me. I've been reading about Saint Bernadette. Been turning the screen off because it's Lent, and it is definitely a muscle
Right.
that you just start building.
Right. Yeah. I remember when your girls were younger and we would hang out, I'm like, oh, we should watch Lord of the Rings. And they're like, no, we can't. We haven't finished the books yet. And I'm like, what? You have to read the books first?
That's
and,
right.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, man. I'm actually reading Lord of the Rings, too.
Oh, yeah?
For the first time. Yeah. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
There's so many things lost in the movies, you know, and so I wonder if the movies would have been a disappointment for them after reading it.
Well, it's funny how they pull things out, and they do that for actually all the
Everything,
books.
yeah.
Now, I was not a great reader when I was little. All the way through my whole life, I wasn't a great reader. So just because you're not a great reader doesn't mean your children have to follow exactly in your footsteps.
Right.
It's just a decision you made. I made that funny little judgment. Nope, you got to read the book first.
That's I think I'm actually going to do that for the
And
kids.
it's because we did that. I actually started that with Little Women
Okay.
because Little Women is
It's a good one. That's a classic.
Don't read the book first, and then
Yeah.
like all the British books, you got to read
Pride
the
and
book.
Prejudice.
Yes, all of that.
Anne of Green Gables.
Anne of Green Gables, exactly.
That one's really close to my heart. I watched that for the first time with your girls.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, at your little house in Coeur d'Alene near the church.
That
old
was
church.
very well done.
It was, yeah.
Now, what is the actress of that girl?
Oh, I can't remember her name.
That was very well done.
And they came out with new ones. They came out with a Netflix series.
Yeah.
And it's like they added a new character into it that's gay, and like Gilbert's dad is like, anyway, it's a mess. I watched it and I'm like, ugh, this sucks.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I'm really careful with some of those great ones when
Yeah.
they're
Modernized.
modernized. Although the one that I did like is the brand new Little Women.
Oh, the one with what's her face? The one that was in Harry Potter. I don't watch Harry Potter, but
I don't know who. Yeah,
she was the one.
was she?
She played Meg, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I only know that I sat down to it
Mm-hmm.
and I was like,
Yeah, I thought that too.
pretty well done.
I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Pretty
actually.
amazing because I'm pretty hard to please, and that was pretty well done.
It was good, yeah. And I actually watched that with my mom when I was in the hospital with Gianna,
Oh,
with TTP, and it was
Yeah.
on the free movies that they had on the
Yeah.
TV, and I'm like, huh, this is awesome.
yeah, it's
It
not
was
bad.
great.
It's
Yeah.
not bad.
Yeah, but the one that's from the 80s or
Oh yeah, the
90s.
early or the 2000. Yeah, is it Ryder?
Yeah,
not
Winona
so much.
Ryder.
Yeah.
I actually liked that one.
Oh, did you? I never
did
saw it.
because you've never seen it?
No.
It's actually pretty good. I liked it because it had like a classic feel to it. You know, like
that's
the
good.
music was beautiful, and also the part. Actually, I won't spoil it for anyone that's never seen it, but
Yeah.
one of the characters dies. You know, and that was like. Like it hit so much harder than this new modernized version.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yeah, I have back and forths with your daughters all the time about the Pride and Prejudice, like the full BBC
Oh yes.
versus the one with Keira Knightley in 2005.
Oh,
They're like,
shame. I won't even hear it. Nothing but Colin for us.
no, I know, but for me, I'm like, I love Keira Knightley in this. Like, it was great. But no, I do like the BBC version too. Colin Firth is a perfect Darcy
Yeah.
and always will be.
Yeah, he's
So,
pretty good. It's
yeah.
important to get that good stuff in their heads.
Mm-hmm.
Really important. I don't think I've done that as much for my boys
Okay.
as I've done for my girls.
Yeah.
So don't make the
Why
same
do
mistake
you-
I did.
Why do you think that? Is it because of just.
Because my husband was not really raised on Cary Grant and Bing Crosby and all of that,
Okay.
and he wasn't raised on the classic. He didn't really. I mean, he was a guy. So for him, the movies that he watched were a little bit more war oriented,
Okay.
and so yeah, you'll see when Finnegan gets older.
Yeah.
Your voice is a little bit more quiet versus Dad's.
Right.
Paul will say, "Well, we're going to watch this," and I was like, "Really?" And the other day, I thought to myself, "I think it's time we start watching some Gentlemen, or we need to start getting some Cary Grant and some Gregory Peck. I mean,
Yeah.
these men need to know how to."
It's a Wonderful Life. I love that
We
one.
did watch that this Christmas. I said, "Let's do it. Let's watch it." The family loved it.
Did they never see it prior?
I don't think they remember. I'm not sure the boys ever saw it.
Wow, Teddy had never seen it.
Yeah.
And he watched it and he said, this is going to be a family tradition from now on. He loved it because he's like, oh my gosh, Catholicism is amazing in
I
this. Like they
know.
even had, when they were talking about the war, they had a scene where there was a priest saying mass and it was in
I missed
the
that part.
traditional Latin rite.
Right.
Like you can tell because Teddy and we paused it and we're like, is that a Catholic church? And it totally was because it had the altar was set up and it had the little I don't even know what
Altar
they're-
cards.
Yes, yeah, and had them on there and the people were praying and we're like, yeah, that's traditional Latin mass
Yeah.
for sure. Like,
Well, that's all they knew back in the 40s. I think
Right.
that's when that movie came
yeah,
out.
the 40s. So we were like, yeah, that's totally Catholic. You know, you can just kind of pick up on that sometimes.
Yeah.
But he loved it. You know, he
Yeah,
loves
it's a great
Cary
movie.
Grant and yeah, it was
Yeah,
awesome.
it's a great movie. Great
My
movie.
mom has never seen it. Isn't that surprising? Like, that surprised me.
What?
Yeah, it surprised me that she had never seen it.
I find that hard to believe.
Because I felt
Is
like...
your mother not a big movie person?
Not... Well, I think they're starting to become movie people, my
Yeah.
parents. They text me all the time, you should watch this movie that we saw on Prime. And I'm like, I don't have time to sit down and watch a movie. Are you kidding me? Right now I have kids. I barely have time to think.
Early bedtimes,
Yeah,
Emily.
right. 7:30 is their bedtime.
Oh, that's very good.
Yeah.
Well done.
And they go to bed at the same time.
Exactly.
So-
Exactly.
It's good, and they're close in age, you know, so it's easy. We're gonna start moving Finnegan, I think, into Gianna's room pretty soon.
Pretty soon. How old is Gianna?
She's 17. No, no, not 17, 19 months.
Yeah.
So a little over a year and a half. And then Finnegan is 7 months.
Yeah. That's about when we did it. I can remember the day I brought Louisa in to sleep in Margaret's room.
How'd that go?
She loved it.
Really?
She absolutely loved it. Margaret was as happy as ever. Louisa was like, and
That sounds like Louise.
I told Margaret that even when the baby starts crying, just turn over and ignore her. She'll cry, but just I want you to stay in your bed. And Margaret was so happy to not be in the room alone.
Yeah.
Because she liked to have. Margaret's very social.
Margaret's so funny. She's Finnegan's godmother, actually.
I know.
Yeah. So, and she came over and watched the kids the other day. For Teddy and I, she babysat for us.
Yes.
I don't know if she told you about that. Well, so Teddy and I went, I don't remember where we went, but she was watching them, and she said that Gianna like out of nowhere yelled, "Mom!" And she's like, "What just happened?" And there's this show that they watch called Bluey, and in the beginning it's like, "Mom, Dad," and so Gianna knew that it was coming up, and she's like, "Oh, okay, that just happened." Like, and it was funny because after the kids went to bed and Teddy and I came home, we sat and we like debated. Like, we had this like very deep conversation. And so whenever Margaret comes over, we always have these really good conversations, and it's funny to throw another opinion in the mix.
Oh, and she's got it.
She does, and she's very eloquent about it too. And it's cool to see like how charter affected us too. Like, we just judged senior projects the other day. Did she talk to you about that too?
No.
Okay. Margaret, talk to your mom.
Oh, I guess no. Actually, she did. Excuse me. Anyway,
Okay.
Yeah, she did. She did. Indeed.
Yeah. Did she ask you? So we were talking about how a majority of the projects were very liberal. Like, they were about something political. Like, I had 2 of them that were extremely liberal. One of them was about teaching African American studies more, like in elementary schools, and like putting emphasis on a lot of different things with African American studies, which, I mean, okay, I kind of agree with it, kind of don't. Like, I don't feel like they need to separate those, just embed them all as history, I suppose, but like they really wanted to put emphasis on like specific. Anyway, and then which ironically the gal who was giving the speech was white, redhead, like white as can be, whiter than me, so I'm like,
is that possible?
Right, I know. So I'm like, okay, I don't know if I believe you, really. Like, I don't know why she did her project
on that.
Yeah. But also there was another gal that gave one about comprehensive sex education and like straying away from the abstinence only education. And anyway, it was like, these people are 17, 18. Like, when I was 17 and 18, I barely knew any of this stuff. Like, I knew what this stuff was, but it didn't really affect me. So I didn't really care about it all that much.
Well, I think the value of charter, and I hope they keep to it, is there's a whole body of knowledge that has to be communicated to the young people. And if you start incorporating political, a list of political goals, then there's only time for so much. And so you're going to have to move something off in order to make time for too much politics, be a liberal or something else. I can remember it was either Margaret or Louisa. I think it was Margaret. She went to University of Mary and she came back, and there was something that was some moral point that I hadn't gone over with her. And she said, "You never brought that up to me. You never told me about A, B, C, and D. You know what?" And I said, "Hey, you were busy. You were busy studying history and cello and literature. It's not that I'm against it, but you have in high school that there's a reason it's called a discipline. You have to confine yourself to the canon of knowledge. You have plenty of time to talk about other things, but during high school, it's got to be disciplined." So I hope charter continues that, as well as the fact, a sense of like, keep it inside the boundaries, because if you're just going to start talking about the latest issue of the day, you're really going to take up a lot of time that's needed for let's just first, do we at least have the French Revolution down?
Right.
Like, do
Right.
we have our history down? Do we have the timeline down before we start talking about something
Right.
else? So it's important to, but the other side of that is that, people, there's two sides to it. I said to Margaret, people are more progressive in their thinking. There's just a lot of people are very progressive in their thinking. And then I also think sometimes, are you just a little more conservative than you were when you were 17 or 18?
I feel like I am.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Like,
So it's a little bit of all of that,
do you feel like seeing Pius and Benny, because Benny goes to charter too, right? Do you think that has changed, like, since Margaret and Louisa were there? Like,
yeah, unfortunately, I definitely see that the culture is there at charter also.
Okay.
I think there's still some really good things. Obviously, we're still there, but the culture is strong.
Yeah.
And the culture definitely is more, it wants to incorporate all this new things. It's like, we shouldn't learn about the Civil War. We have to learn about this issue or this issue. It's
Right.
like, well, let's just stick to. And that's the goodness of charter, is that it doesn't get too political. It just sticks to the basics.
It was interesting when I was there, because when I was a senior, I was in government, I think. I think it was government. And it was around the time of the elections with Trump and Hillary
Oh, was
in
it?
2016. Yeah, so it, like, the culture kind of permeated itself in our discussions, because that was just what was happening
Right.
day
hard
to day.
Hard to not do that during
Right.
an election.
And
Yeah.
it was interesting because it was a helpful learning tool to
Sure.
have that around. But at the same time, I mean, it did take up a lot of time with our discussions, because this is the future of our country, and they're two starkly different people.
Yeah.
But it was actually a privilege to be able to see that while learning about the government at the same time.
Yeah.
I do agree with you, though, about the Civil War. Like, we should learn about that, but I think that a lot of times it's being overshadowed by the injustices that happened
Right.
during that time. And honestly, I mean, it's important to know that so you don't repeat, like,
But you got to know the timelines of the battles and
right. You
like
have to know, like, this
the
is
generals and
American
so-
history.
Yeah, some of the
it's like-
basics.
and I think that it should be incorporated as equal, rather than just like putting emphasis on one thing and like completely forgetting the other. So, and I guess it's kind of hard to find that balance, especially when it comes to
Well, and there
being
is a
political.
place for that in senior year, especially. I was a senior in 89 and 90, and that was during Perestroika. And when the wall was coming down, that was during Gorbachev,
What is perestroika?
when the communism was falling
Oh, I see. Okay.
in Russia. And we got U.S. News and World Report every week, and we had to read the whole thing, and we were tested on it.
Wow.
And it was like a magazine. It
Yeah.
was a pretty decent sized magazine. And we studied it and we learned it. And, but I was a senior. So that was totally appropriate. I mean, that's, we were learning what was going on, and we were learning history like as it was happening. So it's similar with an election, there is a place for current events, and applying things. It's just not something that should be done, certainly in senior year, in government, or in, what did we call that? Yeah, I think that was called U.S. government. Maybe.
Yeah. Civics, I think. Too.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Something
And
like that.
civics is in 8th grade, but so there is a place for it. I think as long as you keep, we lived in the old Kokenauer days at Charter.
Yeah.
Remember those?
Oh, I love Mrs. Kokenauer.
I
Actually,
know.
I think I follow her on Facebook.
Oh, you're kidding.
She was so funny because she wrote in my yearbook, like, stay staunch
Yeah.
or something. And I was like, what does staunch mean? And I looked it up and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Like, she was this feisty little lady, and she was just so awesome.
She was.
She was tiny. Everyone was taller than her, like even me, which is saying a lot.
Yeah.
But she could command a room. We used to joke that she had like a bazooka in her car.
Yeah.
Like she was just that type
I
of
think she was
person.
in the military, wasn't she?
She was,
Yeah.
yeah. And she taught very eloquently.
Yeah, she
did.
did.
And unbiasedly too.
I know,
And
yeah.
it wasn't like she was teaching us the facts. She wasn't pushing a specific ideology or anything, you know,
Yeah.
and she was very open to debate. She was very,
Yeah.
and so it was awesome. It was really awesome.
She was great.
Yeah. So when what made you decide to go to Steubenville?
Oh, it was a great thing. Steubenville was like God's choice for me.
Okay.
I was a junior, senior, and I got the idea I was going to go to college. Nobody had really gone to college before in my family. And so I started applying to lots of different universities, all like crazy universities. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. I'm going to apply there, you know, like Boston College, because I just liked the sound of it and just, you know,
Yeah.
different. And my good mother she just would look at me, nod her head and say, that's interesting. That's good. And now I'm applying to this. Now I'm going to try that. And okay. And I can remember the last thing, I used to want to go to Steubenville when I was 13, before I even started high school. I knew someone who went there, and I was like, oh, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to that place.
Wow.
But then, you know, by the time I was 16, oh, that religious school, that's just too boring. I'm not going there. So my good mother she just said, okay, you know, yep, that sounds good. All right, try that. And then it was just a moment of grace. And I remember sitting in my car and I just felt like, why have I stopped thinking about Steubenville? And I ran up to this payphone and I called my mother on the payphone from school. And I said, Mom, what about Steubenville? I think I'm going to go to Steubenville. And it was like my mom had been praying for me. And she goes, that sounds great. That sounds like a good idea.
Wow.
And of course, my mom said to me, I'll take you to Steubenville on a trip.
Yeah.
That's, you know. So in April, she took my sister and I to a come and see weekend in Steubenville. And the minute I drove up the hill, I got a lump in my throat that I still have never lost.
Wow.
For my alma mater. Yeah. Steubenville is like, you know, that's, if you're going to spend money, if you're going to spend all this time, a university is to be your alma mater, your other mother, you know, your mother. So you have to have a love, and you have to feel a certain sense of like, this is where I belong. So I did. I rolled up there and I went. I was 17 and I remember putting all the paperwork on this living room floor, filling out all the financial aid and trying to figure out how to do it. And
It's a big process.
yeah, it was fun.
It's a lot. Yeah, and like Charter really helped us with that too.
That's right.
With FAFSA and everything.
That's right. We had that. We used to do
yeah.
that in paper. Of course, nothing was computerized. You had to fill it out with the pen and then turn it in. And
I almost feel like it'd be easier on paper, actually.
oh, it was easy. It was
Yeah.
a lot easier.
Than the
And we
online.
and I went to Steubenville, and I came back that weekend, and I remember going into my English class at Bellevue Christian, which was all filled with Protestants.
Yeah.
And all my classmates said, what did you think? What did you think? And I just still had the lump in my throat. And I said, I'm going to Steubenville.
Wow.
And they said, you know what? You're going to love it. And I said, well, I'm Catholic, and it's great to be back with my people.
Yeah.
Because I had been spending 4 years with
Protestants.
Dutch
yeah.
Calvinists and, you know,
Wow.
like serious, great Catholic. I mean, great people, but
Right.
just not my.
Yeah, you know
Not
what?
my
That's
people.
interesting you say that because when I was at Charter, I didn't have a lot of Catholic friends other than like your daughters.
Right.
And I mean, these people were amazing people, you know. But there is something missing, you know, when you're with people that aren't 100% yoked with you.
That's right.
And when I moved in with my roommates, the Egans,
Right.
then I was like, okay, I'm good now. You know, I had a lot of Catholic friends, and
Right.
I even tell my mom I probably wouldn't have been Catholic if I didn't move in with them.
Right.
I just
Well,
was
I
at
don't
a-
think that's true, but
Well, I probably would have come back, but like I definitely wouldn't be as strong as I am now, for
yeah,
sure.
that's right.
And it just, I mean, I had that time in my life where I wasn't praying because I felt like I was scared to be a nun. I think I told you
If you
this.
prayed, you
yeah,
were going to
I
be
was
a nun.
like, if I pray too much, I'll be a nun. And I was so scared, I stopped praying. I know, and I laugh about it now.
That's
and
cute.
I did talk to my friend. I talked to a friend one time, and she's like, I had the same thing.
Oh, so it
and-
must be a common thing.
Maybe.
Maybe
and
we need to address that.
I think so. So,
Yeah.
and she talked to a priest about it, Father Adams, actually.
Oh, okay.
And he
What did he say?
said, "You're not called to be a nun." And I was already engaged to Teddy, so I'm like, I think I know what I'm in for, but she hadn't even met she met her husband, but she wasn't engaged or anything. And
He put her at ease.
yeah, but it was nice to know that I'm not the only one that's done that. And I'm sure there are others out there that are scared to talk about it, 'cause
Right.
it's a terrifying thing to discern. I mean, it's you're deciding your life, and
Yeah.
yeah, but I remember distinctly you guys had this picture in the girls' room with a married woman and a nun.
That's right.
And
We
I'm
still
like,
do.
You still have that.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, and I think about that all the time.
Oh, do you?
I do.
I should gift you a copy of it.
Yes, please.
And you
I
put
can
it in Gianna's room.
I wonder if there's a married man and a priest. If there's like a conjoined one.
The same one, same type of thing. Yeah.
That would be really cool. But yeah, I mean, that is I think that vocations are talked about a lot. But I think that talking about marriage, I think, is a really important thing too, because most of us are called to that anyway. So that should be addressed a lot more, I think, in my opinion, especially in the traditional realm.
Really?
Like,
You
I know
think that?
Yeah, like I know they're trying to get vocations. There's definitely an absence of them, not at St. Joan of Arc at least, but in general, there's definitely been a lack of them. But I think that marriage kind of goes on the wayside because it's so mainstream in a sense, like most people are called to that, and so they just assume it's being talked about. But I think that priests especially should talk about it more, even for their own good, I think, because I think that it would be helpful to talk to married couples about their issues. I think that a lot of the issues with I don't know, moral issues within marriage, I don't think are talked about enough. Just as a pretty newly married woman and a new mom, I feel like a lot of my questions haven't really been addressed very eloquently.
I don't think you're alone on that as far as newly married couples. There was another family that was like, well, we really don't give them much support newly, and we just hope that your parents and your older, if you need to come and ask, but we don't. Somebody else had said that, it's a little tricky, especially being a brand new couple in the modern world. It's funny. I don't know. I tend to think they do, but then I don't know. And they do talk about vocations a lot too.
Well, and I think, especially being a young adult growing up in St. Joan of Arc, in Catholicism in general, and even just being a Christian, like that's talked about a lot. To the young adults especially, like
right.
Many of the conversations that were said to the youth group were about vocations, but they didn't really highlight marriage, so when
right.
I was going into being an adult, I'm like, oh, marriage, it's just so basic, but it's like the cornerstone of Catholicism. We wouldn't
right.
have priests and nuns without moms and dads, right? And so I think it's a disservice to not talk about marriage more to young adults and to teenagers, especially as they're starting to get into relationships and starting to want to be a couple, I think that it's so important to talk about marriage and the struggles of it, because when you're a teenager, you have no idea.
That's true.
You have no even semblance of an idea of what marriage entails.
Right, the difficulties of it.
Even in a marriage, sometimes you don't. Like Teddy and I never expected to have the struggles that we've had.
Right.
And I'm grateful for them, because it definitely put us in a place where we're like, okay, marriage is hard, but doable. We've dealt with some pretty difficult things.
Sure.
So that's been really helpful. But I do think, in your opinion, seeing your girls grow up, and Imelda, sister, now becoming sister, like, how did you talk about marriage and talk about vocations with them? Like, did you put more of an emphasis on vocations into the religious life, or like, was it pretty equal?
Well, you'd have to ask the kids. I think if I were to talk to them, if I were to guess their answer, I would say I probably did emphasize religious life more, because the default is married life. So if you don't balance things out a bit, then you'll never talk about religious life, because it's so in that way. The other thing is I did want them to consider the religious life before they started pursuing the married life, because you can't really do it the other way around. You can't first pursue married life and then do religious life. And the third thing is I wanted them to just give it a good hard look, a good hard shot, a good hard, so that, as I always say to my children, you don't want to look your daughters in the eye and say, I never tried it out. I never visited one convent. I never even tried it.
Yeah.
You want to be able to say, yep, I tried it. Yep, I did that. It's a beautiful thing, you know. So I did. I think I probably, to be honest, I probably did encourage religious life, because I don't think the other needs encouragement. I mean, most people like the idea of falling in love and having little mini me's. You know, I mean, it's a lovely, it's a lovely thing. So, I mean, I'm not there yet. You know, I still have, all my children are not, one of my children daughters has made a decision, but the other ones have not 100%. Although, you know, but I do think that the religious life is something to be brought up, because I know you say it's brought up a lot in our parish, perhaps, but in the world, it's really not.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think that it's wrong to bring it up. I think it's important, for sure. I think that if it's taking up most of the conversations, I think, with young adults, then that might be where it's problematic. But I do think it's important. Like, I never went to a convent to check it out. Mostly out of fear, you know, that God would be like, you're going to be a nun. And I'm like, no, but no, I did talk to nuns. I have great admiration for nuns. They're beautiful people. And ultimately, could I see myself being a nun? Yeah, sure. I could probably see it. But also, I'm completely happy being a mom.
Yeah.
You know, and Finnegan and Gianna are too cute to not have around, you know, so God had a plan, but, it's interesting. I was talking to Jessica Flynn, actually, and I'm like, I feel like God is giving us all of these struggles because I chose the wrong vocation. And she's like, a nun has said the exact same thing. She's like, everything would be so much easier if I was a mom.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like the grass is never greener on the other side. As long as we're doing what God wants us to do. Yeah. And, you know, honoring him in the best way that we possibly can. Yeah. There's really no difference. It just looks different, you know?
Well, I do know that I can remember Mr. Bresee saying to me, was it to me, or did I hear him say it to someone? This is Paul's dad. Don't ever expect to be rich. Catholics aren't rich. We have children. That's what he would say. You know, he's like, don't expect it. Yeah. Just, you know, now some are kind of wealthy. Good, okay. But as a whole, Catholics have a lot of kids, and it's not uncommon not to. Now, I mean, we don't want to be dirt poor, but we may not be as wealthy as a family that is able to do something else and is, you know. So one thing I think is, when you said, did I choose the wrong vocation because I have all these struggles? I think it's important to remind all of our kids, and marriage is hard because we're living in the world. Right. And it is hard. I mean, it's hard financially. For you, it's hard with health issues. I mean, look at people in our parish that are losing people, you know, dying. It's hard in their health. It's hard to live in the world. Yeah. And this idea that, you know, well, if I'm pray too much, I'm going to become a nun. I'm guaranteeing you, when Gianna and she starts getting older, your prayers are gonna, all of a sudden you're gonna double them and quadruple them, because you're gonna be like, I'm not praying enough for these guys, because actually it's the people living in the world, and we have a lot to pray for. We have all these kids that we have to, you know, somehow. So, but it's hard. It's definitely hard. I mean, ask your parents, ask my parents, ask, you know, it's hard. It's rough. It's rough.
So what do you think helped? So when you were growing up, did you have like a great pride in being Catholic, or was it kind of an afterthought? Like, some people, they're like, yeah, I'm Catholic, but they don't don't do anything about it, or they don't really identify with it when they're young. Was that true for you, or did you
No,
feel
I always had a great identity as
Okay.
a Catholic. I was always, that was a strong identity. And what exactly that meant was really explained to us. We really studied the catechism, and we also, we talked about it a lot around the dinner table. We talked about what it means,
Right.
and we talked about issues. We were talking family. My mother always, we would hash things out a lot. So, so I don't know about pride in being a Catholic. I guess there was probably, because I can remember coming back from Steubenville and talking to my Protestant friends and being just beaming because I loved being Catholic,
Right.
just so happy that I got to be back with my people. And so there was definitely, but the identity was strong. But not so much in ways that it is today. Like, I don't really remember praying the evening rosary in my family.
Okay.
We prayed the rosary like in the car. That's about it. We always went to mass together every Sunday.
On Sundays, yeah.
And I can remember my aunt, I went to daily mass since I was like in 5th grade.
Wow.
And remember my aunt saying, "You have no reason not to be going every day."
Wow.
And I was like, yeah,
So, how many siblings do you have?
just my sister and I.
Okay. Wow. So, is she pretty strong in the Catholic faith as
Yeah.
well? That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I say she's stronger. And, it was all a great gift. It was a great gift. We grew up in a really great parish. It was just a New Rite parish. Both Colleen and I made our consecrations to the Blessed Mother when we were like 15, 16.
Wow.
And we had a great youth program. And that made a big difference.
So the youth program, do you think that affected you staying Catholic, like throughout high school?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Wow. So youth programs, it sounds to me, because that was the same with
Right?
the youth group with St. Joan of Arc.
Absolutely.
Having those people, being surrounded by Catholics,
That's right.
that is so important. And that's something that Teddy and I really take seriously with the kids, like they're young, but I love it when Gianna goes up to kids and starts talking to them in
Right.
her, gibberish or whatever, because even though, moms aren't super happy about Gianna going up to their kids sometimes, but like she's starting to like talk to these kids, and I'm like, these kids, you're probably going to be in youth group with them. You're probably going to be in
That's
catechism
right.
with them.
That's
like
right.
start them young, talking to different kids and having different relationships,
Connections with them.
right? And
Yeah.
actually, interestingly enough, Teddy and I were talking about moving to Steubenville a few months ago.
Oh, were you really?
Yeah, because Matt Frad, talks about Steubenville, and
Uh-huh.
I'm like, oh man, the community sounds awesome. But we look at this area. There's
Right.
so many Catholics here. There's so many good people here.
Right.
Even people that aren't Catholic. There
Right.
are just so many people that believe in the tried and true. This is truthful, and I want our kids to be around that.
Right.
It's really important.
Right.
Really important.
It's a lot easier to stay with the faith if you have that community. And our priests know that.
Yeah.
I mean, all of our priests have put an effort into doing youth groups for them. And it's essentially the exact same program that I did. Little
Right.
catechism, little dinner, little fun.
Yeah.
It's like the same
Right.
program.
One thing that I think would be really helpful is I think, I don't know, like seeing my siblings, they didn't have as much of they didn't have a good time with it, like,
What youth group?
yeah, or even catechism. It was hard for them, and I think there was a lot of prejudice almost against them because they were at public school, and I even felt that in some ways. Some kids were pretty mean to Eliana and I because we went to Novus Ordo, so it's like, I think that it's important to be nice, I guess, and
Sure.
in like the simplest term, like have your kids be as nice as they can to everybody,
Right.
because that could make or break, faith.
I know.
Like
It's
as much
true.
as it is important to understand you're there for God. I mean, we're human,
There's
so-
nothing wrong. That's right. Sometimes you have to process with the kids. I can remember coming, Margaret, she had a girl at I guess youth group or at the parish who was quiet, and Margaret was like, I don't think she likes me. And this girl was rather popular, and so Margaret's like, I'm out. She's not really she doesn't really like me, and she's kind of quiet. And so we processed a lot. Like, she's actually shy.
Margaret?
No, this girl.
Oh, okay.
She was quiet, but it was like, I know you think she's quiet, but actually she's shy. And then we processed, people love to make a new friend.
Right.
Here's what you can do to make it. People love to hear their name. People love new people. They get tired with the same old people, so we would process. And to this day, Margaret's good friends with this girl.
Really?
But when she started off, it was like, she doesn't like me.
I'll have to ask Margaret who it is.
Yeah.
Or I'll
She'll
ask
tell
you afterwards. But...
She's too quiet. She's she doesn't really, it's like, and I'm thinking she's just shy.
Yeah.
It's not that she's out for you. It's not that she doesn't like you. And then, trust me, try this and this. Have you tried that? And it's like, no. And okay, go try that. And then she'd come back and she'd be like, yeah, that works a little bit. Okay, now let's try, So kids are funny that way.
I actually thought that about Margaret.
Oh, I'm sure.
When she first met me, because we were at Dr. Pohl's school.
Yeah.
And Dr. Pohl was like, there's this family that's coming up and we want you guys to meet, like setting us up for a play date, and you guys walked in and Eliana and I are there and I'm like, I'm Emily, and Margaret just like looked at me like, who is this?
Yeah, because Margaret's shy.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, she doesn't like me. And now she's the godmother of my kid.
That's right.
But another thing too is like, we went on a swim date. Like, they took us swimming, which I'm like, okay, the first time I'm meeting someone, I'm in a swimsuit. Are you kidding me? This is the worst. Like, it's the worst play date. But no, we're still good friends now.
Oh, that was a great day, though.
Oh, yeah.
Those were golden days.
Those were. And Dr. Pohl's school was so funny.
Yeah.
It was great. We almost fell a couple times off of a mountain when we went.
That's right.
And I kind of wish that I had listened more to Dr. Pohl, because she's actually, I want her on this podcast someday.
Oh yeah,
she would be actually really cool.
She would be.
Because she's so brilliant, And
and now to the wonders of YouTube, we started pulling up all of the little songs that she taught the girls.
Oh, really?
And they would say like, "What about this one?" And Louisa remembers all of them, and she remembers all the words. And it was like, "Oh yeah, do you remember that one? Do you remember that one?"
I wasn't there long enough, I think, to learn all of them.
She is so talented when it comes to singing, and she pulled off that performance. It was amazing.
I didn't even see it, but it was amazing because she has so much knowledge about botany, things like that, and I want to talk to her about it because I want to teach Gianna and Finnegan that. Yeah. I think that's such a cool skill to have, and I think as a 7th grader, I didn't really respect it enough. Now as a mom and as an adult, I'm like, that was like gold.
I know.
I wish that I had understood that, but I'm especially happy that I have a friendship with you and the girls.
That's right. Those were the olden days. Those were good times.
Yeah, 12 years ago. That's so crazy.
Is that how long it was? 12?
Something like that, because I've been graduated from high school for 7 years this year. So,
wow.
Yeah. And it was cool for Margaret and I to go back and judge senior projects the other day, because we walked in and we're like, oh, wow, this changed a lot. And like watching these kids, like afterwards we talked a lot about how the teachers have changed a lot, and how...
Well, it's a whole new staff, I think.
Right. Yeah, pretty much. Barring a couple of people. Actually, one of my classmates that I graduated with is a teacher there now.
Teacher, right? It's
like,
crazy.
What the heck?
Yeah.
Why? She's not old enough to do that. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh wait, I have 2 kids. But yeah, it was just a really surreal experience to go back in there and see these new kids coming up and learning much of the same things that we did. Right. But coming out different, coming out
the world is different. It's really,
I'm pretty happy that I graduated when I did.
I know.
Because I don't know how it would be tremendously hard to stay Catholic, being infiltrated a lot like that,
Yeah, but there's a lot of grace out there too. There's a lot of, I just got home, Benedict just came back saying, oh, we just did a Bible study at Charter.
Really?
Yeah. I guess, like, I don't know when it is, but he's like, yeah, we all get together and we read the Bible. I'm like,
wow, nice.
That's
well, they used to do prayer sometimes around like the flagpole.
Oh, did they?
Once a month. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
It was funny because a lot of them, Protestant. So I would bring in a Catholic perspective, and Dr. Prozier, he's the one that started Charter. He was awesome because he let Father Gordon come in and talk to my class.
That's right. I remember that.
And there were a lot of people that actually had good questions for Father Gordon. I wonder if Father Gordon remembers that.
Oh, I'm sure he does.
I bothered him a lot. I called him like twice a day for a while. But anyway, it was really cool that they had that ability, to...
I'm sure he would do it again. I think he went in for a specific thing, didn't he?
What were we talking about?
It was like was it during history?
I think it was during... It might have been during history. I can't remember. Yes, it was during history.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were talking about what were we talking about? It was
probably the church or something, and he came in and
there was something specific, and I can't remember what he might actually remember, but I think it would be really cool to have him go in again. Maybe
Sure.
have Pius ask him.
Sure.
Or one of the priests to come in and like have a Q&A with some of the students.
Didn't it start though with they had brought in someone else? And then you said, "Well, can we get fair time or something like that?"
Oh, I think we were talking about the Quran.
And somebody brought that in. Oh yeah.
I think we were
Somebody
talking...
brought someone in.
Yeah, or I don't know if they brought someone in. I think they were talking about the Quran, and they were talking about I think they were talking about world religion.
Yeah.
During history, and I'm like, oh well, I have the perfect guy for this. And so he came in, and like it was awesome.
Those are the good days.
I was like, this is my priest, and I was like so proud that he was there, and
Yeah.
it was super cool. But it was like show and tell almost, But Father Gordon's so smart, he's so knowledgeable about all this stuff, and it's just awesome. Like he's perfect for, I think, high schoolers. Because Father Nolan too.
Yeah.
Was awesome for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So with Sister Melda being, will she be able to hear this?
I don't know.
Well, probably not during Lent, I bet.
Yes, exactly. Not during Lent.
Maybe afterwards I'll send it to her. How would I do that? Maybe I'll write
I have an email.
Oh, you can email her?
I can't. Well, no, I don't email her.
Oh, okay.
But I kind of have one that's a general for the community.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So did you ever think she'd be a nun? Like, did she ever show signs, like, as a young girl that she wanted to, or?
We never talked about it.
Okay.
So she never said, well, this is what I want to do. I always felt like she was inclined towards, she was very devout. She was always inclined towards, prayer came more easily to her, maybe.
Okay.
I also always knew that she had a very high goals in life. She was very disciplined, and she had a lot of interior goals that she didn't really talk about with everyone.
Okay.
So as a mother, I could see that. So I guessed a little, she'd be good at this, or that would be something that, but when she told us, it was a surprise.
So when did she decide that?
It was a great story. I don't know if you remember, but the church was closing.
St. Joan of Arc, the old one.
No, the church for COVID was closing.
Oh, yeah.
It was the feast of coming upon the feast of St. Joseph.
Okay.
So it was March. And Father Rappaport got up during a daily mass, and he said, we're going to have to close this church. And he said, this is going to be very difficult on all of you. This was during a daily mass. And he said, and I remember him lifting his head up, and it's like he looked straight at me while he was saying it. And he goes, I would like to recommend you offer up this difficult time for the intentions of vocations in our parish. And so I just looked at him like, okay. So I did. I offered it up, for vocations, for whatever. And then some weeks after that, while we were just in the midst of, I think it was all shut down.
Yeah.
And Sister Mary Imelda came to me and her dad and said, we were in our room and she said, I'd like to tell you something. And we were like, okay, what is it? And she said, well, I have an appointment with Mother from Carmel tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. And she's like, because I'm going to try to pursue the religious life. And that was it. And I was like, I actually started crying and trying not to make a big deal out of it. And I was like, all right, well, let's see how that goes. So she went and visited with Mother. And then she visited a couple other, she visited Gower, and she visited the Filiers. And then she was 17, and she went on her month visit. And she called us, I think at the day before she came home from her month-long visit. And she went and she was there for her birthday, and she turned 18.
Wow.
And the sisters took her to the park, and they had cake, and they celebrated her birthday. And so then she called us and she said, well, Mother has given me the papers. I have filled them out, and I have been accepted, and I'm entering in a month.
Oh my gosh.
From then.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's a quick process. Well, now it's not. I mean, now that she's in, it's like 3
Right. That was just the
years.
very beginning, you know, right. So and I remember thinking to myself, well, sister, don't you think you should stay for Pius's confirmation? And then, well, what about Thanksgiving? Well,
Yeah.
what about, like, it's a little, wow, this is quick. And she said, nope, 1 month. And then and so that was it. And so I said, okay. So she got herself a ticket,
Yeah.
and we went with her. And the day we went in, she opened up her pocket, and she had all this cash because she worked at Subway, and she had all these coins and all this paper money that she had saved from her tips, and she hadn't really spent it. You know, she just had this wad of cash and all these coins that she had brought with her. And she's like, I don't know what to do with all this. Because, you're not going to go into the convent with a stash of money.
Oh,
And I said,
I love her.
and I was like, okay, well, let's just give this to Mother then. And so we kind of put it in an envelope and put it together. And we said, well, this is for you. It was just her leftover tip money. It was just a cute little thing that she had done,
Right.
So that was it.
That's so funny.
November 7th. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I remember when she came up and visited.
Just recently.
Yeah. And it was funny because I was sitting there with Gianna, and she came up and gave me a big hug, and I'm like, I wasn't expecting her to hug me. Like, we're not, we're friends,
Right.
but like she was always friends with Eliana more so than me.
Right.
And I mean, we all hung out together, but
Right.
it was just funny. And seeing her in a habit was just crazy.
Yeah.
But it seemed fitting.
Yeah.
It seemed very fitting. And I have such a huge respect for nuns.
Yeah.
Now that I'm a mom,
Yeah.
because it's like they've taken on, like, I can't imagine not being a mom.
Right.
And they've taken on this huge responsibility
Right.
to pray for all of us, and to give up being a biological mom. I mean, you can
right.
be a mother in a sense as like a mother superior, but that's not the same.
Well, many cultures, they call all religious sisters, they call them mother.
Interesting. Okay. Well, actually, yeah. So in the Byzantine, they do that.
That's right. They call them mother. So they are mothers.
Mm-hmm.
They're mothers to us. They're spiritual mothers, and they do not forgo motherhood.
Right.
They just forgo the physical maternity.
Mm-hmm.
So they're very motherly. When I was in second grade, I had a sister Henrika.
Okay.
Beautiful sister Henrika. And she was, when she was 15, she got on a boat from Ireland and sailed over to the United States, and she started her formation 15.
Wow.
Crazy.
That's young.
And when she died, she had educated half of Seattle. I mean,
Really?
so many people were students of Sister Henrika.
Wow.
And she was a mother to, just hundreds upon hundreds of children.
I'm surprised she's not open for canonization. Like, do you
Well,
think
she was
that could
just,
happen?
she was just a good religious. And when I met Paul, guess who also had her as a sister, as a teacher? We were both like, you had her too? Of course. Did she educated half of the city? Not really,
Wow.
but I mean,
But yeah.
she was very, very dedicated. And she was a mother to so many people. Sister Henrica, I pray for her at almost every mass I go to, because she was just so motherly and such a gift to everyone. So, the religious life, it's what it is. We really do need the mothers, the spiritual mothers.
Right.
And that's what they are.
Yeah, and I mean, I hope if Imelda's listening to this, Sister Imelda, I always get that wrong. I'm like,
It's okay.
like it's like people that I know that are religious now, I'm like, it feels like kind of unnatural to call them, by their actual title. Sister, if you're listening to this, please pray for us.
That's
we
right.
need it so bad. It's like living it. Margaret and I were just talking about this. Like, it's harder to be out in the world.
Yeah.
It's harder to be in the thick of it.
She knows that too.
Yeah, but those
Yeah.
prayers are so important. They're
Yeah.
like gold.
Well, you should send her a little picture of Gianna and Finnegan, and you should,
Oh, okay.
send it off to her and tell her, please pray for us. She does pray. I think her prayers are very,
Important.
yeah, I think they do a lot. She's her prayers. I know she prays very much, and I know she prays for the parishioners here,
That's important.
the people that she remembers.
Yeah.
She clearly remembers you.
Yeah.
Big bear
I guess
hug.
so. Yeah. I'll have to send her pictures. I didn't know if she would like appreciate a letter.
Oh yeah.
I think that'd be cool. I think Margaret said that they won't get them until Easter.
Yeah,
the
they
letters.
don't. They do not write during the penitential, so Advent and Lent.
Oh.
But once that's passed,
Yeah.
she would love to hear.
I know there's orders there are like lay Carmelites and lay Benedictines. Do they have a lay version of
Not for
hers?
the filiers, no.
Okay.
They're just too young at this point. Yeah, that'd be good, especially
really
after
cool.
you were. I tend to think I've thought about doing that. I tend to think that works really well when the kids are a little bit grown. It's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot to do.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it now.
Yeah.
Like maybe when
Take
Finnegan
something else on.
Yeah, well, I mean, taking on Gianna and Finnegan is a chore in and of itself. And Father Eichmann had a really good sermon about how your like the hard parts of your vocation are actually sanctifying you. And I'm
That's
like,
right.
okay, well, I'm gonna get to heaven then, because Gianna ate her own poop the other day, and like, but those things, like, that was so beautiful for moms to hear, because it's like we are constantly working so hard to achieve, keeping our kids alive and helping our husbands, and it's just like you just sometimes sorry, my phone is going crazy. Eliana's texting me. It's you feel like you're going crazy sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's nice to know that those crazy times are like the most important to your sanctification.
Yeah.
And it's hard to think about sometimes, but I think it's important to hold on to that.
Yeah. Well, marriage is my mother always says is the school of virtue.
Yeah.
You'll look back in 20 years or even 10 years or even 5 years, 1 year, and you'll be like, wow, that wasn't as difficult as it used to be.
Yeah.
I used to really labor over that. That was so hard, but it's not as difficult, whatever it is. And so you build that muscle up.
I hear that a lot from moms that have their kids pretty much grown. Like, you're going to miss all the toys around, and, there's a million toys on the ground right now, but you're going to miss all of those times, and I'm like, how can I miss those times of changing diapers, but I mean, I think that there's a season to everything, and I guess in a sense we grieve each season as it goes.
That's true.
Like Gianna, I'm sad she's not a baby anymore. She's
That's right. How old is she now?
she is a little over a year and a half. So
She's still so little.
she is very little, and Finnegan is funny because he kind of fills that gap a little bit. But once they're, Finnegan's walking around and everything, it's like, we're not going to have any more kids after them, so it's like I'm enjoying it as much as I can. And Gianna, surprisingly, was more snuggly than Finnegan. Like, Finnegan, he's like, I just want to get on the ground and go. Like, he wants to crawl so bad. Gianna's the same way now, so it's like, I do grieve that, but especially from like my own mom, you know, she says like, I miss those times when you guys were little.
Oh, yeah.
So I definitely hold on to it a lot tighter hearing that.
I was just going through all our emails trying to clear out some old email because my email is saying I have too many.
Same.
So I was looking at all the large files, and of course it's all the pictures, and I was like, oh, this hurts. This hurts. And then I'd open another one. Oh, it hurts. Oh, I'd say, Paul, this hurts so badly. And then I'd open another one. Look at this little guy. Oh, this hurts. And I realized, you know, it says in the Bible that children are a blessing. I mean, they really do bring joy. Because right now, our youngest is 10. Our oldest is 23. So we don't really have a lot of little ones.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's why. Because when you don't have little children, I mean, that is sweet. That is a real blessing. It's a sweet time when you have those sweet little ones. So I was like, I think I'm starting to think I'd like to be a grandmother. I haven't wanted to be a grandmother at all. I'm just like, oh, it's overrated.
You can always come over and hold the babies if you want. They will love it.
I mean, your mother must love it.
Oh my gosh. She is so funny. She says she's mentally ill. Like I duo call her, and she picks it up at work. And she's just like, hello, you feeling? And she just like, for like 5 straight minutes, like baby talk. And I'm sure people are like, what the hell is going on over there?
Right.
You know, but she just loves it. She loves it.
She was made for it.
She was, you know, and the kids just love her. You know, Gianna, it's funny actually, whenever I pull up Duo, do you have Duo? Mm-mm. It's like a FaceTiming for people without like iPhones. Whenever I call my mom, Finnegan and Gianna know the sound because there's a little like do 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 do.
Right.
And so Finnegan, whenever he hears that, he smiles because he
Yeah.
knows mom's gonna be on the other line.
Yeah.
And then when mom actually pops up, he starts laughing at her.
Yeah.
Like she's a clown.
Right.
Like he just loves it.
Right. I know. She said that about Gianna. She's
Yeah.
just like, she's crazy about me.
She is.
Yeah,
She is. And
so
about my
cute.
mother-in-law too, they love their grandparents. And
And how could you even think of Ohio?
I know that
You
was
would
the main thing.
break their
I
hearts.
was like, oh man, we're not gonna be around the grandparents, and so we were like,
Matt
no.
fraud. Who cares about Matt?
Yeah, I know, Matt, we're not moving. But yeah, no, it was just, it's so great. It's really
Yeah.
cool, and you can always come over and hold the babies.
Thanks.
They are awesome. Yeah, and seeing all the littles at church too. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
amazing, and I love that there are so many of them. You know, because to me, I see those kids and I'm like, oh, future friends were Gianna and Finnegan.
I know.
You know?
But I still I think the same thing with my kids.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we lived when the church was super small. And now it's like, I don't know you. I don't know you. I don't know you.
I
have
know.
no idea who
Isn't that
you are. I've
crazy?
never seen you before. I've seen you, but don't know who you are. And then I look over at some of the families that I do know, and we like look at each other with these puppy dog eyes like, oh, I haven't seen you forever, because you just don't see the
Right.
same people, and everything's so spread out.
Right.
But I always say it's great for our kids, because
is.
our kids they like a large, interesting, lots of people. They like that. They don't want the same 10.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they don't want that. And they like variety, because kids like variety. And
Gage loves it.
yeah, and they sure have it at the
Yeah.
parish. So no complaints here, because it's good for the kids.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, if any mom wants a play date with Gianna and Finnegan, hit me up because they would love it. I mean, here, this is like a kid's paradise.
Yeah,
I mean, I
exactly.
have to clean up the cranberries off the floor, but you know, like we had some kids over here the other day, and they were all on that little slide over there, taking turns, and there was one bottle of water, and they all drank from the same bottle.
Oh.
Like they would pass it around like the communal bottle, and I'm like, okay, well, if any of them have chicken pox or whatever, this is a good time for immunity.
Time to
But
do it.
yeah.
I see your purple scapular over there. Did you?
I wear one too,
And you wear one?
and I wear one. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's beautiful.
You're all business.
I'm trying to be. I got pretty close to meeting God, so I'm like, okay, well, I better prepare for when I actually do. But yeah, the purple scapular is awesome. I don't know. I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a prayer that you say with it, but it's essentially like it is contemplating like our Lord being taken down from the cross primarily. Like there's a ladder on there, and then there's the Pieta and an angel catching the tears of Our Lady. And on the back of it, it's a little easier to see on that one because it's kind of faded on mine, but on the back of it there's a sponge and
Oh, right, sure.
nails. Oops, sorry. And
This is Marie Julie Jeheny. Is that right?
yeah. And it's one of the things that I really loved about it. It said
It's beautiful.
it protects from fires, you know. So like
Oh, nice.
there's like an actual term for it, like a widespread fire, you know. And I was like, oh, okay, well, we're safe during the 3 days of darkness or whatever, you know, because there was supposed to be fires. I've looked into that. There's been a lot of talk about that recently.
Lately there has been, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why. Maybe it was coming up.
Well, things are kind of sideways, so people are all, well, and not only that, you know, you get a bunch of people talking about it that seem to have the name saint or blessed or venerable in front of them, and
Padre Pio. Yeah.
Yeah, and so people start
Thinking about it. Well, and I mean, yeah, it's an interesting. I'd love to like have an expert on here sometime.
Yeah.
I know they have them on like Taylor Marshall, and I think they've had one on Pints with Aquinas. But it is interesting to hear. One thing when I watch those videos, I'm like, well, okay, yeah, it's easy to like have fear about it, but I think if we prepare ourselves, you know,
right,
why would we fear about it? Like, what's the worst outcome?
right,
You know, being caught off guard. Then guard yourself.
right.
Right. So.
And I think some of those, most of them, there's a lot of warning.
Yeah.
So it's not going to happen by the time I get to my car.
Right.
After this is over with. You know, it's not going to just strike.
You just kind of understand. Yeah. Right.
There's some warning. I mean, God is not going to.
Yeah.
He's going to take care of us.
How do you teach your kids like the scary stuff in Catholic? Because I've heard, so like for example, with the 3 Days of Darkness, I've heard some people say like they left the faith because they were so turned off from that, you know, being taught that so severely, you know, they're just like, I can't be in a faith that's like that terrifying.
Really?
Yeah. So how do you address those type of things with your kids?
Well, I think you have to know the temperament of each of your children. Some of the children will tell me, no, Mom, we're not talking about that. So then I think you have to be sensitive to the fact some people don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
But I usually do it with a little humor.
Okay.
I try to, you know, oh, did you see this? You know, or like I have one that's like really afraid of it. And so I kind of poke fun of it and was like, well, it's probably happening. And, you know, I know that really scares you, but, you know, you're just going to have to, it's one of my boys. You're going to have to just deal with it. You know, it's like, I think you can handle it. I kind of make fun of the fact that, we're all going to be suffering. So it's not just going to be you.
Right.
And you're probably right to be afraid of it and move. But you do have to, you can't fixate on it. So I try to be a little light about it. But I don't think there's anything wrong with thinking about the fact that God's justice could come at any moment.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's...
just keep your soul in check.
Yeah, you're not supposed to offend God.
Right.
And we do. And it's not something to play around with.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't play that card all the time. Usually I try to be light, but the truth is, it's a very good thing to think about the fact that God's judgments are very frightening.
Yeah. Fear of God. That's one of the, what is it? The, not corporal works of mercy. The,
gifts of the Holy Ghost.
Yeah.
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 Beginning of wisdom.
Yeah, something like that. So do you have any advice for like new moms like me? Like what advice would you give, or to your younger self, you know, with little kids, or even just like in different states of life? Like what advice would you give?
For a new mother, well, you're doing it already, early bedtime. I really do believe, because I think that you have to take the time with your spouse. Some people like morning times and some people like evenings. Okay. But you should take the time where the children are in bed or doing, in bed, and then try to spend a little time with your spouse every single day to talk with him or her. And that might mean that you don't get to do your favorite thing because you're going to have your cup of coffee together, or so every single day, Paul and I mean, for many, many years, we don't do it now every day. We have a little more time on our hands, so we don't have to. But when we had small children, we definitely did that every day. My aunt and uncle used to take a walk every night.
Oh, that's
together. Awesome. So I think it's important that you do that, because it's amazing how many people do not talk to one another. And the other advice I would say is to try to laugh as much as you can, because laughing is so important.
Yeah, those kids are so funny. When Margaret was watching them, I was telling her about Gianna had woken up in the middle of the night, and Teddy was doing DoorDash, and I was saying the rosary with her, and I had the candles on, and it was dark, and I could just see her, walking around in front of me, and she was running around, and she stopped in her tracks and squatted and farted. It was so funny how she did it, 'cause she just kept going, she just did it and just moved on. And I was saying the rosary, I had to stop
and
laugh about it, because she was so funny. But that's just constant, They're
She's funny
kids. Yeah, Finnegan is so
well, you
funny.
are funny, and your family is funny,
and Teddy's funny too.
And Teddy's funny.
His family's really funny.
Yeah, isn't it too bad? You pity those people who don't laugh as much as they really need to, because laughing is the best thing.
I think that Thomas Aquinas actually said something about that.
Oh, really?
I think so. I'm sure he did. I mean, he said everything.
We laugh a lot in our house.
Yeah.
We have laughed a lot.
I admire that about you guys a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it's funny because your guys' humor is very different from my parents and my humor, But it's funny because it's joy is very vague in the sense that it's applicable to a lot of different things,
right?
And it doesn't have to be a cut and dry type of humor. Like Father Kemna, remember Father Kemna?
Right.
He was so funny.
Was he really?
I thought he was hilarious because he was so monotone and so he was very dry, but his humor was very dry. Or Father Ripperger is the same way. He's very he's very cut and dry, but he's funny. He's a funny guy. Yeah. Well,
in that it goes with whatever type of person you are. Mm-hmm. Just make it work for whatever you are.
Right.
Humor can be one way for one couple and another way but laughing is really, really important. I mean, I think it is. I agree. Yeah, Paul can really get me to laugh.
Yeah.
I'm the more intense one. Big surprise there. And Paul is really the jokester.
I haven't really talked to Paul very much. But when I do...
many people.
Yeah, and it's funny because we were at a wedding and he's like, don't leave that kid around or I might steal him. And I'm or something like that. And I'm like, well, I can just give him to you to hold, and he loved it. He loved holding Finnegan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was so funny to see, because when I was growing up and I was, at your guys' house all the time, Mr. Bresee, he was
scary,
kind of scary, very intimidating, and now that I'm an adult and I have kids of my own, it's just I see this whole new side of him and I'm like, this is it feels unnatural, but
when I first met him, my sister said to me after we were there at a picnic, we think you would be great with Paul. And I said, Paul? Which one's Paul? Because there were all these guys around. And she pointed to him, and he was standing along a chain link fence. And my first thought was, ooh, he's scary looking. That's what's... I just remember thinking, no thank you. Just because, but he's super funny.
So what made you decide, yep, this is the guy I want to marry?
He asked me out.
Okay.
We had a in college, we had a advisor who said the religious life is an interior call. Mm-hmm. The call to marriage, your phone rings. And so he asked me out and he was great. We laughed. We had, he was a good man, and he was a good Catholic, and I thought he was great. And so I just, of course, and then I wanted to go out again and again. So it never even dawned on me that he wasn't I went and told my aunt, they were like, well, there's this guy and his name is Paul and we think he would be great with Elena.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, but it's never going to happen. And my aunt said, what's his last name? And I said, Bresee. And she said, I know the Bresees. They're a very good family. So she had known him, even though they were like maybe 40 minutes away, 45 minutes away. And we never saw them, but my aunt knew a lot of people. And she's like, yes, I know the Bresee family. Because had mutual friends, and they said, very good family. And so that's what I tell my girls. It's like, well, that's kind of what you want when you have some of us, but not you and Teddy. But, a sense of like, oh, yes, we know that family. You know, like a very good family. Yep, we know those people. So,
right.
So it was never really it wasn't hard to figure out.
Actually, one of my friends went to high school with Teddy.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so, and she told me he was a player, and I'm like, a player? What are you talking about? And I actually told Teddy about that, and he's like, yeah, okay, I kind of was, because he liked a lot of girls.
He was comfortable with girls.
Yeah, and so, like, I guess if that makes you a player, that makes you a player. But, he didn't, like, serially date people or anything, or, like, mess with girls or anything. But it was just funny how she described him, and I'm like, this guy? What are you talking about? Like, he's a player?
Was that before or after you were married?
Before.
Oh, how funny.
It was before, and but it's funny when his parents met my parents for the first time. I was terrified, and I was like, oh man, I hope they like each other, because
right.
And my parents are pretty easy to get along with, but it's scary to like combine those two worlds, and it was great. It was great.
Well.
And when they get together still, not very often, but like when they're in the same area, in the same room, Gianna and Finnegan are great because they really are good with sharing time with each of them, and that was really cool. I was concerned about that at first, but they do. They're really good about that. So yeah, Mr. Bresee is so funny. I love that guy.
He's really, he is funny.
I think he'd get along with Teddy.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
If you could get him to talk.
We'll have to get together for dinner sometime.
We should do it.
Yeah, I think it'd be awesome.
We were going to do it before, remember?
Yeah, I don't know what came up.
Yeah.
I think we got sick, but...
We should have you, and you just bring the little chubsters over.
Yeah. It's funny because his family is very Scandinavian.
Oh, are they really?
Yeah, and I was telling Margaret that. I'm like, his family reminds me a lot of your family. Like,
oh, really?
Like how you are, is very similar to like how my mother-in-law is.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and
is the house cold? Paul always says to
actually,
me,
no,
it's not. Maria walked into the room and Maria said, why is the house so cold? And he says, well, it's because I married a Scandinavian or Norwegian or something like as if the house is not warm enough.
Well, it's funny because I like the house cold.
Yeah.
I'm not Norwegian at all.
You just like it nice.
I just like it nice and cold.
I know.
Because it's like you can layer up. You can't take layers. Like there are only so many layers you can take off.
I don't like it too warm.
Yeah, but his family likes it warm. But no, like the way they are Scandinavian, like in like heritage wise, but also the way that they act. Like they're very forward. His mom especially.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, very very like blunt, which is I appreciate that a lot.
Oh, is she really?
Mm-hmm. I appreciate it too.
Is Teddy like that?
Oh yeah.
Oh, interesting.
He is. He's very patient though, so it's kind of an interesting balance because he holds his tongue, but when he says something, he's extremely blunt about it. He does not sugarcoat anything.
Ooh.
It's kind of an interesting combo because it's like if I'm doing something annoying, he holds it in pretty well, but if it's like especially annoying, he'll like,
just come straight out
like,
and say,
Emily, you're being really annoying right now. And I'm like, okay, good to know. I'm going to annoy you more. We call each other our purgatories. I'm like I signed my letters to him, like your purgatory. Because we that we're trying to get each other to heaven, so if we live our purgatories out in each other, I guess it'll be easier. So it's funny. He's a funny dude. You should hear his conversion story.
Yeah.
I think you'd be interested in that.
Yeah, you should put him on the podcast. Here.
I'm thinking about it, actually. I know it's for moms, but I think in light of like what we've been through, I think it would be a really cool thing to do. Maybe have like couples on eventually.
Right,
I think
right.
that'd be really cool.
That would be
So,
very
yeah.
good.
Well, I always like to ask my guests, did you become more like a mom, like your mother, when you became a mom?
I hope so. Yes, and I think I did.
Good.
I became more like my mother, I hope.
Maybe I'll have
Not
her on.
as good as my mother. Yeah, you should.
I love her. She's really cool.
She's very lovely.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
a really cool gal.
She still outranks me, outdresses me, outdoes me. She's still like your mother does to you.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's really, she's very, very admirable.
yeah, she's a really awesome lady.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
Let's say a prayer for moms.
Okay.
In the name of the Father, and Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily.
Oh, and I also want to mention a couple things. First of all, I am looking for a jingle for the beginning of the podcast. So if anybody wants to submit a jingle, if you submit it, I'm going to choose one. And if you win, I will give you a special prize. I don't know what it is yet, but to be decided. You'll find out if you win. Also, please share this with 2 people, at least 2 people. The more people that this reaches, the more moms will be on and the more stories will be on. So please share this with as many people as you can, but at least 2. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And if you're watching it on Spotify, follow the page and you'll be notified whenever I post. So yeah. All right. God bless you, everyone.